Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Well, folks, I am back to my roots, apparently. Just a week removed and I am back to the horror, thriller, slasher, all that good fun stuff genres. I'm a bit late to the game, but I was definitely curious about this Welcome to the Blumhouse series anthology setup on Amazon Prime from this October. In short, it's 4 films this year, 4 films next year, from the masters of horror to come out seasonally, not unlike the Hallmark movies on Christmas. The Lie, Black Box, Evil Eye, and Nocturne are the 4 films for the 2020 portion of the series. I can't say I knew a whole lot about these movies, but they have something to do with families and fear, and they definitely have more of a stance of thriller than outright horror, I would say. But let's see if these are like 50% good, all kind of average, or maybe, I doubt it, but maybe all amazing. But we need new movies during these crazy times, and I needed something new to hold me out until I can finally watch the New Mutants. And I definitely note take as I watch things on average, but this episode is going to be a bit more stream of conscious style, what I'm seeing as I'm watching and writing and relaying those things to you, the fans. Think of this as an abridged version of my thoughts marathoning these movies. And away we go. So the first movie on this list is The Lie, which came out in 2018 but was released this early October. So it has a ton of actors from the AMC show The Killing, which is a mixed bag of a show on AMC if I've ever seen. This includes one of the lead actors, Muriel Enos, also in World War Z, which I think gets a really bad rep. Yes, the books are better, but still. And Peter Sarsgaard from season 3, and who will have a role in the latest version of The Batman. The setup of The Lie is not particularly unique. There is a troubled home life. Somehow it leads to a girl and her birth father driving to a dance camp in the snow, and they pick up a friend who the dad's never met on the road. I guess she's flirting with the other girl's dad, and they go off, and seemingly his daughter is pushed off a bridge in a cold waterfall for liking her dad, and she dies. It's a very strange setup, like almost immediately, not in a like mystery, ooh, I wonder what happened, and like a, is this really how we got here kind of thing. Her mom works in the legal field, which, I mean, this movie doesn't feel like it's particularly breaking any ground with a type of genre of a whodunit. So, of course, someone has to have some idea of the legal field. And it does provide an interesting angle. But at the end of the day, you know, halfway through this movie, it just feels like a sad combination of the I Know What You Did Last Summer beginning without the fun, over-the-top slasher killer, and a paling in comparison to the very good HBO show The Night Of. I watched it a bit like that. Oh, the missing inhaler, the truck seeing them, are all these things gonna pay off? And are these little things that are missed now going to become issues? And maybe that was a nice, unique way to watch it. But I kept waiting for something to happen, but it just was taking forever. And maybe that's the difference between a movie and a TV show, but it felt like there was so much wait time for things to get going and rev up. I don't come across many movies that I outright just hate the pacing. I feel like if you are looking at a movie and you see, this is going really slow, or this is going really fast, that movie's doing something wrong. I get this is trying to build on the unnerving nature of things and the tension of the crime that's eventually going to be realized, but I have to give it a chance again one of these days. But I felt like There Will Be Blood, which is, critical darling, Daniel Day-Lewis, I thought it was just a bit too slow. I know The Irishman was one of the award films of recent coming from the Netflix era, and the actors are great and mob stuff is great, but it was so slow. And even to some degree, the Samuel L. Jackson cop movie about like making out with your wife while your neighbor's a cop and is weird and notices, Lakeview Terrace, that had a little more going on, but I always just felt those took a while, maybe too long to just kind of get going and ramp up the anything of excitement. And this falls right in that category, but with such a small scale, it really feels it more than anything. I guess it's kind of unnerving to have the whole family try to lie to a detective and pin it on her maybe abusive dad. We don't really ever see anything. We get one small glimpse of something, and maybe that's a thing. We don't really know. Except for the fact that you almost know there is no way at all this will work. It really is kind of a let-off. And as I said, this movie is just such a small scale. The main cast list caps off at like 7 people. None of these movies have huge cast lists. They're all most definitely smaller in scale, especially with anyone who has a talking point or a role. At least with the killing, the crimes, I'm thinking seasons 1 and 2 specifically, 3 and 4 were quite bad. Were a bit more blown up with a media blitz of it being a public official who was maybe committing these heinous crimes. This one perspective of following pretty much just the parents. You don't really even follow the daughter that much. It's just one very small scale story, and at the end of the day, it's not dynamic enough to be a really exciting small stake story. It's just kinda average. And even like some of the, watching the movie and maybe 2/3 in, they're bringing up things that I didn't even remember. And it's only like an hour and a half long movie. There's both sets of parents are split and have another partner, and the one, I don't think you ever see that husband again, and the one, his girlfriend is in a band, and I even forgot this band storyline existed, and it's all a bit confusing of who's with who and who are these other characters and where everything comes in, and even whoever the detective's partner is, it all just feels a bit thrown in. I felt like the friend of the wife who had the legal background, sure, there's a cop who's snooping around and finding stuff, and her partner is just thrown in to be a jerk and not really add anything progressive or interesting to the story. It's just sort of a jerk cop thrown in for the sake of having a jerk cop character to balance the seemingly on their side but good at her job detective. Just what it is. It all just feels thrown in, and it's just a bit of a mess, and I want things built out a bit more. I really just feel like it's all over place, and this story has been told time and time again, and told better. This movie feels exactly like a direct streaming service movie, which it kind of is. Not unlike Secret Obsession on Netflix with London Tipton and the Allstate guy. I don't know what I expected from these, and I'm pretty disappointed off the get-go. And I started with this one because I think it was the first one to come out. I'm not even remotely scared or really even unnerved by this. This anthology series, for me, when I was watching, was off to a rough start. I will say I did like that the inhaler paid off in some way of saying, okay, she was there. I don't necessarily know if I loved the logic jump of them seeing the bus stop, seeing from a far distance, because they had to go way off to find the bridge in the beginning, so why would the cops correlate all these things together? It just feels a bit too convenient to be a real good story. And I knew it was going to happen, but it took ages. And as I said, it felt unearned for a development, and it just feels like there's so much filler to get to those different story beats in this movie that we all know are coming, but we just have to get from point A to point B to point C to be done with it. I'm not going to say all couples should be good at covering up and framing murders, but this is like painful watching these two blunder around. Then they end up hitting the one down with the car and kind of leave him there in the road, and they killed him. I don't think we don't know where his body is. I don't know, did they leave him in the road? The car's back and they're cleaning the blood off it, but if this body is ever found, who else would kill that guy? They're the only suspects. To him being gone would make their lives easier. It's just a weird no-brainer kind of thing. I guess it's a big surprise that the friend from the beginning, guess what? She's alive and well. I didn't see that coming, but I don't know if I was really looking for it either. I mean, what is going on here? This one girl just wanted to see her boyfriend, and that's why she faked her death? What? That makes no sense at all. And the friend went along with it to use this tragedy to bring her two parents back together, which, nice sentiment, but now your parents are living with the eternal guilt of killing someone for no reason. And even if you take the part out where they kill that dad, the logic jumps in this movie are fascinating to have to make this movie make any sense. I guess you either had the daughter as the killer who had no soul, or she never really did it, because watching even her process the guilt, she's a emotional wreck at times, and then she's just totally cool. And, I guess the movie's trying to say, oh, she killed her, and that's the end of the story. And I don't know, maybe that would have been a more interesting story than what we ended up with, which was just pretending things to bring together a marriage and to see a high school boyfriend. So what's the moral of the story here? I don't know. Teenagers are the absolute worst, and throughout the movie, they talk about how kids play their games. Well, this, I guess, was one of the games, and it was an awful one to boot, and never have kids, I guess. Moving on. Black Box. Classified as a science fiction horror film, right off the bat, I love how different and scary-ish it is. A jump scare pops up almost immediately. While memory loss movies are not new by nature, Memento, the one that just came out on Hulu with Andy Samberg, Groundhog's Day, it's a trope that exists, but I'll say more Memento-y because it's a little more serious and less of a comedic version of living the same day over and over again. I kind of like how this one makes it look visually, though, how they utilize their techniques to tell this story of memory loss. All the post-it notes and how to remember things. And it's nice, I think, even to have this memory loss thing as a family story of a single father who has a daughter that he has to raise and deal with his healing of memory loss. Also, not that I know either of these main actors, but both Mahmouda Ati and especially Amanda Christine are great in their roles. It's so interesting to see this young daughter have to work to help her dad remember things and kind of be the adult, but she's also playing that role of a child to have to help him try to remember these things. She's almost acting as the kid sometimes to hopefully spurn his memory on. And, you know, this is a child that's had to grow up super quickly and still try to have that amazing daughter relationship with her father. She's almost the caretaker in a way. I feel like I really just am into this premise off the bat, and him starting off being choked by something, which I have to imagine will be a reveal of him choking himself as part of his memories, trying to fight back. And maybe this is like a PTSD type story where he ends up with repressing a memory that maybe was his fault. I think the thing about this movie I liked is I was always guessing what was going to happen. You're going to hear some guesses as we discuss and devolve what I thought when watching this movie. The guesses are as bad as some of the ones John and I made about The Boys. So we get the sci-fi part once we eventually get to it, and there is a few very sparse, Get Out vibes. And obviously Get Out is a masterpiece that this is not anywhere near it. But I appreciate some of the same feels it has. Maybe it's the fact there's a doctor, maybe it's the fact that there's an empty void that isn't necessarily another world, but something empty space that things can manifest in. But even just watching this, it was, probably more scared than anything in, The Lie. Just the waiting for, them trying to scientifically explain something, or more importantly, maybe someone in his subconscious that's super scary that is trying to reach out and attack him. I feel like the stakes are clearly laid out when he is on his last straw for his daughter potentially going to be taken away by Child Protective Services, and that's sort of the inciting incident, the thing that makes him go on his journey to this sci-fi doctor to try and fix his memories to save his relationship with his daughter, which is very relatable, attainable goals that we as a viewership are rooting for him to do this. While the Inception rules are explained, okay, something with a watch and clicking it and jumping between times, okay, whatever, been there, done that. But I do like the visuals of the church and more scares of this creature living in his subconscious. I don't know if I'm, super suspicious of his doctor, is she bad or not? But Dr. Lillian Brooks, played by Felicia Rashad, Empire and the two Creed movies, I wonder if the technology or the doctor or either he or the thing growing inside him, what of these is going to end up being the true monster? And even after you see this first thing, it's like, okay, he has some memory back. So maybe you're like, oh, it's working. There's growth with his daughter. It's nice to see these heartwarming scenes sprinkled into this movie that you don't really know if it's going to end well or bad. And there's just way more family connection, where The Lie, it felt like, was just in essence 3 random people. And oh gosh, I thought The Lie was bad. But these explanations of trying to figure out this thing inside him, and we as an audience have some knowledge that there's something wrong here, and it's just so good, like the unnerving waiting for it to be flushed out and discovered. And the pacing here is way better than the other movie. So now the friend existed and I'm trying to play games, right? Who is the bad guy? Well, I'm looking at his friend who's also a doctor, and I wasn't looking at him as before. I thought it was a very much a throwaway character who was going to be in the family story but nothing to do with the cool sci-fi thing. And now I'm wondering, maybe he did something and he wants to hide it from his friend, the main character, so he's putting in these seeds of ideas of, no, he's not violent, and no, all these other things, so he can get away with maybe what he did with that guy's wife, which led to her being killed. I'm just saying, the speculations are running wild. It just kept me guessing, and I'm making predictions all over the place. And unrelated to all these things, how great of a creature they've made here with these cracking sounds. It's so visceral when he hears the creature, and when you have those auditory themes, I mean, that's as simple as even like the Halloween movies having that theme or some musical hint to make the audience, and in this case the character, aware, because the sound is part of the world, not just something we as an audience are here to see. It really is a great, oh no, there it is again, and you get that fear of the thing is coming for him. And when you hear this sound, initially you think maybe it's like bones creaking of this thing moving, and it's weird. It's almost the full Exorcist walking backwards on your hands and legs, climbing around the walls type thing, which I do not like at all. But now you hear it and you're like, okay, he's starting to get these memory flares in the real world. Okay, well, maybe it does sound like a body being pushed down the stairs. Okay, now I'm thinking, oh, maybe the creature is him in his own mind trying to stop him from seeing something traumatic, where maybe he's the bad guy. That's where I go now. That's my next thought. So I had no clue at all. I mean, like when you finally find out what the main issue is, I had no clue that the doctor would put her own son's conscience into the different guy's body. And maybe now that I'm thinking about it, maybe that's not as good as I think it is. It's good in the storyline, but there's no hints at her having a son. It maybe that feels a little thrown in. Maybe that could be a little annoying to. I didn't bug me watching it and even thinking about it until just this moment of it. Maybe it's a little unearned, but I like it. And obviously, I think looking back on it, you're kind of like, okay, now you know that she uploaded the son when he was unconscious to this guy's body and mind, and he woke up and he started feeling this other presence, and the other presence has been her son the whole time, which is an interesting, get around. But that's one of the things you have to watch it once to get the full gist of it, and maybe watching it again, you'd make more sense. And a lot of times, I think I've said this before, the horror slasher genre is fun to watch the second time through because you know who the killer is and what the stakes are, so you can maybe pick up on some things you didn't pick up on the first time. But it, as we now know. So she's the bad person who's uploading her consciousness of her dead son into a different body, and that's the whole plan, right? And it's interesting having, one actor play two different roles. And you do see her son a few times in the mental mind space. But for the most part, it's one actor trying to do two roles, which is always a fun challenge. And when they're able to do it well, you got to appreciate that for what it is. But seeing how this new guy tries to do everything to make his not daughter, hate him, and send her away, it's heartbreaking. And I mean, this is a sad ass movie. And, obviously the important part is there's some good scares, but it's nice having a little emotional ties to a movie. And as I said, gotta love an actor, doing a great job being two different roles. I didn't know where this movie was going, though. That's sort of the thought. I figured we'd get an ambiguous end, see him functioning in the new body and maybe enter that room where we met who I guess is his actual wife and daughter, and that'd be it. I think that'd be a nice ominous horror ending, but that's not where we're going. There's something different when you see him interact with his family and everything feels fine, and obviously to be pretty relatable and understandable, no one's really believing dead guy is somehow back in a different body. That sounds crazy. But fun fact, that's actually what happens. And, kind of seeing him shift and where his rage and scares were, which obviously is where, we eventually will find out where it went wrong the first time, is that he's kind of a tempered, abusive husband. And those things don't normally go well for you in the horror genres. But when he's going crazy, he gets more brain damage, and, he ends up with the host body, not the who's running the controls on the joystick. It's like SpongeBob and Plankton in the scene where he has a little remote control thing in his brain. He's walking him back and forth, but a little less humorous in this case. And when he ends up with his old family, and even seeing, I feel like I was just waiting to see the creature not be in just the black box, but in the real world, and seeing that creature fight him with the reflection in the window. Now you're really confused. Is this creature some third entity, or is the creature him? When I was watching, I figured the creature was a third entity who was some scary demon-y thing that lived in the black box. Clearly, now that I know, that's just a reflection of the whoever's not in control when there's two people running this body. But I do like when we first see the other side of him going to the black box, and the tables are slightly turned, and also just the physical acting of the creature is so good with the weird twisting arms, and the sounds are just gruesome and amazing. I also keep waiting for this door warning. It's like the thing of, if you see a weapon in a movie like a gun, eventually it's going to be used, and that's sort of the thought with the door. They're only telling you the warning because eventually it's going to lead to something that you're going to see in the final climax or battle of the movie, which is clearly where we're at, with the two guys fighting in his mind space for who's going to control the body. And I will say it took a while, and maybe it's not bad that it took this long, but it took a while to see how the first guy died. And the son, at least, child and spouse abuse was kind of what led to his demise. So you're not rooting for him. You're rooting for the guy who got in an accident and who has a daughter who they're trying to fight so hard to get that relationship back to some degree and fix the mental block he has right now. When he finally realizes what he's done, and almost it's like the guy dying, coming back, forgot what happened. And when he is able to see the memories of what happened and how the other man's daughter is right outside and how their relationship is so strong and how flawed his was. Thankfully, he gives up his false claim to the other body and finally did the thing like crossing the streams, like, oh, don't do that, don't cross those streams, and he went out this door and left. And we don't know a whole lot about that. I would have liked to see a little more. We kind of see him in like a dimly lit hallway and that's it. But, you know, you kind of wonder, well, where is he now? And eventually we get a slight tease to that. What I don't love about this scene is how casual his friend was in this moment of like him fighting. And I guess the thought is, well, no one can interrupt this medical thing. Who knows what happened if they pull him out too quickly, if it's like a Matrix thing. Somehow about it felt a little disingenuous. And I guess, you know, obviously the thought is, you know, the fight is within and neither the doctor mom or his friend, his daughter can do anything to fix the situation. But I love at the end when you're trying to, I mean, we know, I think pretty obviously who won control of his body, but when, you know, his mom's holding his hand and he pushes her aside and does the hand thing with his daughter, their cute little handshake. It's something that's been teased pretty much throughout the beginning of the movie, and they finally do it in this moment. Amazing. Thankfully, they broke that device, because when they came in, the friend came in and broke the thing. I was like, okay, they're going to let her just keep going? She didn't get arrested or anything. I mean, what is going on? And eventually he breaks the thing and they leave and everything's good. And look, I can be sympathetic for this villain of our story. And yes, she's not allowed to continue her work seemingly, but she just wanted to bring her son back. That's a story that's so layered and deep and amazing. Not big, you know, in what the moral of the story is here, but just it's as feel good of a scary story as can be. Some of the daughter moments, like him finally getting her hair tied, you know, as tight as it was supposed to be when he's fixing her hair. I mean, these are things that are teased throughout the beginning and are given that small little payoff in the end. And while they're not, you know, you don't have to have a cinematic degree to see these things, it's nice to, as a fan, see these full circle stories and connected themes that start in the beginning and are paid off in some way in the end. And I appreciate that. Coming to terms with, you know, their grief, the other family, the single mom and her daughter, we get to see them kind of move on. Not that things seemed okay with them without the abusive husband and they had kind of moved on, but, you know, they're packing up stuff and leaving. And it feels like that other side of the story needed to come to some conclusion, even though we were barely seeing that story, but seeing it figure out what's going to happen and be done. Love it. And lastly, ends with a real nice cliffhanger. Not that a sequel needs to happen. I definitely don't think it does in this case, but it leaves things open. And with horror, there's something nice to know that even though the lights are back up and you feel that catharsis, I'm thinking of when we used to go to movies. Remember those days? In the movie theater. Gosh, I can't wait to be back. But in some small corner of the world after all that's done, and the story, the things that you're scared of are still present and can still get ya, you know? So where do I think? I think one of two for the Welcome to the Blumhouse movies so far. So on to the next one, Evil Eye. Ooh, sounds spooky to me. Off the bat, this plot makes me think of, shout out Scream Queen Extreme, Jamie Lee Curtis, and the 2003 Disney Freaky Friday film. But it also more so reminds me of the trailers of the 2020 film Freaky with Vince Vaughn. So what is this? Well, it's another family-ish focused movie. I guess there really is a theme on these. When I read the description of what this was, I was like, there's no way that that's actually a thing, but it was. How about that? And so it's a mom who had a abusive, we'll say boyfriend, could be spouse, we'll say boyfriend in the beginning because you don't really know a whole lot, who she thinks her daughter is dating the reincarnated version of that guy. The only films that I've watched that tackle reincarnation as a main plot point is Om Shanti Om, which is an amazing Bollywood film that is way more fun and musical than this movie could ever be. I mean, and that movie has production quality like crazy. That movie is phenomenal. If you have not and you want to dive into the Bollywood genre, I am no expert. Om Shanti Om, phenomenal fun time to get you started. But we do not expect a fun musical movie being made by Blumhouse. The only thing I could find that was close to this in their film archives was the 2010 film Tooth Fairy with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson. So yeah, not their cup of tea. They're a horror genre company for obvious reasons. And there's nothing wrong with that. Just have to get our expectations tempered for what we're getting here. So I like the present day setup of a mom trying to find her daughter the right man on LinkedIn. And there's a lot of fun early with those modern dating elements to this movie. But there's this small lingering feeling that's always always there pretty much throughout, that something is not right and always hanging around like a bad omen coming for her mom. It starts fun enough with her meeting a handsome stranger at the coffee shop. Ooh, is this a Hallmark movie or a Blumhouse movie? That was not her initial match on the dating app. I'm just saying, like, the plot easily could come here about local small town bakery and, you know, her dad ends up being Santa Claus and also a prince. I'm just saying, like, the setup very much feels like Hallmarky to start. Since we're in the season very close, or kind of, I'd say. I can't really tell you when the Hallmark movies start. That's my mom's question. Not my cup of hot chocolate, as it were. But back to Evil Eye. It's just nice, you know, to have this dating app story that feels modern and fun. But you know things are not going to go well when her bracelet and the evil eye charm, I don't know if it breaks or she just takes it off. I felt like it did both. Blatant foreshadowing that you would have to be a cinematic idiot to not notice, like bang you over the head with that symbolism. I wonder if I would watch these movies differently if I was not reading the brief descriptions before them. But if the whole movie is spoiled by a description, you know, for 2 to 3 of these movies so far in just a sentence, there might be other issues afoot with these films. I like that you can see some of the unhinged tendencies of this guy, and it feels like there is a clear difference between if he had baggage or if he has a evil soul of a man from prior with family obsessions and ties. And once again, I'm watching this assuming he is a total issue, the bad man from the past, because most of these movies are supernatural. I would be surprised if that was one of the things where in the end the mom's just the crazy one, he's some normal guy and she ends up killing him. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't know if the film is trying to make her mom seem like the crazy one, like trusting signs and all that, but I super believe she's not crazy from the get-go. You know, I think she's going to be the crazy one that no one believes until it's too late. But I gotta imagine the mom and the daughter, that family tie is important, will make it out alive. I hope the dad makes it out, because as we talked about in at least the Halloween one and kind of the Friday the 13th episodes, even if the dad's not abusive, which normally he is in these genres, he will not make it out of the movie. The mom may not even, but this is a mother-daughter story. Of course the mom and daughter are both going to make it out alive. No doubt in my mind. But the dad is also our fun comic relief character, which doesn't bode well either, but he is so much fun in this movie for a very underrated part of the film. I may be a hopeless romantic looking for love, folks. I know this will never happen, but this movie makes me think there are more reasons to be scared of dating in general. Although she never matched with him on some dating app. So is the moral of the story never date anyone organically anymore, especially in coffee shops? Because I'm pretty sure that's one of those places that people meet people beside bars and libraries and grocery stores maybe, but just throwing that out there. Maybe that's the moral of the story. This is also one of those movies you can't really watch when you're hungry. It's not as food centric as Goodfellas, but there's some really good food scenes. And when I was watching this, I was like right before dinner. I think this was the third movie and I was going to eat and then finish up the franchise anthology series. But I was getting pretty hungry thinking about this and watching some of those party scenes in the film. Yo, straight up. This movie flies by sometimes. It jumps from the daughter and what's her relationship status has evolved and keeps evolving to her mom going through the almonds, which, you know, it gets a little the same sometimes, but just seeing how quickly she moves with this guy. She gives up her financial independence. She quits her job and gets to deliver a passion project. I mean, living wise, this is mind-blowing. Partly because if some wealthy woman wanted to sweep me off my feet, that would be neat, and pay for rent and all that. I mean, I'd be about that opportunity. That sounds great to me, but I guess I should check the horoscopes first to make sure it's not someone trying to kill me. I can't say I know anything about horoscopes, but I know some people are all about them and they're still in the newspapers, I think. I mean, I'm watching this and partly wondering why I like this movie more than The Lie. I think neither one's mind-blowingly amazing. And I think the reason that I like this a little more is because the characters in The Lie are super annoying. Whenever that daughter is like freaking out in The Lie, it's the most annoying scream in the world. The parents, the daughter, and even the mystery man in this movie are just kind of fun. Rarely is the paranoid person one of the main characters. I was thinking about this. The doomsayer is never a staple of the franchise. They're in it, but they are almost always right, but perceived as crazy and then killed off before they can do anything to impact it. I mean, imagine if Friday the 13th starred Crazy Ralph instead of Final Girl OG Alice. Would it be better? Maybe yes, but it definitely would have been a ton of fun to have Ralph as the main character just biking along through the camp, and that was a chase scene. Nothing with running. Him on his little bike trying to get around, and I'm just saying, could be an interesting time. I like when they try to tease the mom being crazy, but it's so obvious, I feel like, that he is the bad guy. And not just a bad guy, but the specific bad guy from her past. But how are we going to stop him? That's my real question. I appreciate her husband in so many parts of this movie. I think he really does help me enjoy the film more with the comic relief. And, it's nice seeing him with understanding her trauma that he never had a part in. But let's be real, these people living right by the bridge where this traumatic moment happened, not great. Big issue. I mean, that's where the big traumatic moment happened, and we've teased a lot of moments that have happened in her troubled relationship with this guy, but that's the big one. I kind of like that there's some counterpoint where first her mom wants her to find a man, and when she does find this guy who seems to check all the boxes and be wealthy, handsome, successful, and all these things, she does not want her daughter to be with him. I mean, that's a tough sell to be so about one thing and then, make a 90-degree turn and try to get out of there. I mean, you gotta stay in your lane, When we do finally see the big moment of him confronting her, it's kind of basic stalker story. We finally do get to see this flashback. Not much to make this type of thing different. I mean, look, Happy Death Day, that was the staple of new, unique storytelling. Nothing ever is going to top that. But it's good enough to finally see what happened, even though we are 2/3 through the movie together. I don't know. Maybe I would have liked to see the whole thing to start. I don't know. I don't know if that would have been better or worse, but it felt like we had to wait a long time to see this thing. At the end of the day, wasn't that exciting. He couldn't swim and he drowned. And I think she was in the water at some point too, but the flashbacks make it really confusing if she ended up in the water with him or if he just drowned when she pushed him. Very confusing. But the highlight moment for me is when he calls her to glow, to be the arrogant, crazy guy from her past. I love it. I don't know why, but it takes this movie ages to feel like it's actually creepy or scary. And, having that little tease of, oh, you like those earrings? Those were the earrings I got you. And he finally kind of reveals himself. I don't think she did a very good job with dealing with the situation. The husband probably should have been there to have 3 people against 1 instead of 2 people against 1. Not sure why she ditched him, but I know that he's not there, so he's probably going to be fine. Not sure why there's no law enforcement calling scene, and not that, she's not local to the region and not that they would have believed her. But, if we do Horror Logic 101, there should have been some thought to this thing, and her just going without at least being perceived as crazy one more time and trying to get help. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. I kind of like the dinner scene, everything is unnerving, and then they reveal that the daughter is actually totally fine, and, he definitely locked them in his fancy, I'll say smart house. It kind of looked like a smart house. You're just waiting for something crazy to happen with them, and the dinner scene is full of just tension and, verbal battling back and forth, and when they finally realize kind of the way, and the mom kind of finds a way to make him seem crazy and make him act like kind of an animal, and using the earrings that he used to goat her to trick him into showing his true colors. Very good. The setup for all these things of her trying to get her daughter alone to share and him not backing down and letting that happen, and just that battle. When we do get to the actual fight, it's good enough. Kind of predictable, good enough. The kitchen utensils being used were good. I appreciate the spice being thrown in his eye because they mentioned, the food was really spicy. Well, they used it. And there's some good moments, but it's fine. It's fine for a low skill battle. Could be better, but could have been definitely worse. My biggest thing I was thinking of the entire time, is there a way to know this guy's actually gone for good? How would they? We don't have any explanation as to why it happened before and how he remembered things. I don't know if that's always a thing with reincarnation of you remember all your past lives. I don't think that's normally a thing, but there's no reason to think it's not going to happen again and again and again. It's going to be an endless cycle of the guy coming back and hunting her whole family line to some degree, I would think. And I don't think her mom dying would stop this. I think he'd be hunting her and hunting the next one, the next one, the next one. I kind of kept waiting for the evil charm to stop the cycle of him coming back, because I thought the dad put the charm in his wife's bag and she was going to have the bag, and maybe putting the bracelet on him and killing him would have ended the cycle. That was my hope. I was waiting for a final, realized done story that would have ended the cycle and that would have been it. But the end makes you think this random baby is the new him. Not bad, but not good either. I appreciated the ambiguous ending in Black Box. Did not appreciate nearly as much in here, but as a fun enough romp, if you turn your brain off for a bit and don't think about this nearly as deep as I was, it's not that bad. It's not amazing, not that bad. So I did a bit of research before this. I didn't want to get too many preconceived notions of what was the best and worst, but I was curious. I had to know which one was perceived as the best. And seemingly, everything I read was saying Nocturne was the best, which was the last I was going to watch. So I was excited to get the last one in as seemingly the best one. What is this movie? Well, I hear a lot of comparisons to Whiplash, which, Nick Rojas may not appreciate. I have not yet seen. I don't know how I always feel about Miles Teller. But this is a story about two sisters who are musically gifted. One looks to usurp the other one at this crazy school for the gifted arts folk who it's very competitive and everyone's crazy by making a deal with the devil. And I love the start with some ominous, crazy carving wall stuff and almost an immediate way to tell the feel of the movie with beauty, classical music, and of course death and darkness. I don't watch too many fancy school things, but the only thing I can think of with this that's even remotely close, maybe the PLL spin-off The Perfectionist. Not what it was, what it could have been. It wasn't, it was cut off so early, who knows what it could have actually looked like. But not trying to compare these at all. Maybe just trying to correlate themes or settings here. I do like the setup of the one sister trying hard and not being able to sling it with her other twin sister who does less work. Maybe. That's what it is perceived as. It's very much from the other sister's perspective, and she's getting rewarded for having a social life and doing all this fun stuff. She's the popular one who has it all, the it girl. And she just seems to get rewarded, and you kind of see it a bit with her parents and her friends who kind of add to this exhaustion of feeling and being maybe somewhat less, something that we all can relate to at some point or another. Even with her being, the page turner while her sister plays, you can tell she's in a tough place and does what she can to have a good relationship with her sister, but you can tell she's missing something, and there's that clear disparity or caste system of importance that has come to be the current relationship with these two sisters. I do love the Chamber of Secrets like Black Book conveniently being dropped off vibe. It's just, the scary devil book. I'm excited. I'm like, who is the devil actually looking like in this story? That's what I kept waiting for. But we see someone drop the book, and I'm thinking this person is whoever the devil is. That's my thought. Fun fact, this story has a bit of an underpinnings of a revenge story, but weirdly it's kind of in the family, not unlike Revenge to a degree, but as opposed to someone trying to break up a family, it's all happening within the family. Fun fact, the lead Sydney Sweeney was actually in Pretty Little Liars, which, we were talking about the spin-off earlier. Also, she's in Handmaid's Tale and Once Upon a Time, but that's a fun nod. There is so much shade between the two sisters after playing the same piece. Ooh, drama, and let's be real, I'm all about that drama. I love some of the devil signs and how she's feeling and these seeing things and all the correlations and just some of the visions that she has. There is so much tension and I'm super here for it. Look, this film is all about giving into the darkness inside us all and the desire for more than we are currently feeling and almost to what we are justly owed. If nothing else, I relate like crazy to this movie, and I feel like we all do to some degree. I'm here for it, and even if this is a confusing movie at times, I am very much interested in what's going to happen next. These dream light show sequences are definitely reminding me of my childhood love Fantasia, not Fantasia 2000, the OG one with the Mickey and the brooms dancing, and there's a demon thing at the end with all the ghosts. It's a very good movie. You can probably, I think it must be available on Disney+. I think they both are, but I'm sure the OG one is. But I love the quick jump horror scare they throw in. Easily, the best ones of these movies are the ones that take place with more of the horror elements and less of the straight up thriller type thing. Ooh, when the one sister kisses the other's boyfriend and things get a bit physical and straight up her sister is severely injured after, and there's that quick scene in the mirror where it looks like it's her with her head crushed in and she smiles. It's so creepy and it's easily the scariest thing in these movies, I think. Or occult visions and the flaming light that maybe it's like the Eye of Sauron thing, maybe it's a flaming eye that's watching you. That's my take on it now. And who would have thought, right? All this stuff is working out for her. She gets to play the piece, the big solo. She's taken her sister's place. Funny how that all works out, right? This movie is remaining dark, but she straight up ruined her sister's life. And that vision of her missing a portion of her head, like I said, probably the scariest thing. I don't know if that or the guy creaking with the conjoined body parts in black box walking like an exorcism thing. It's pretty close. I think that was creepy, but this one is creepy more so because it's only seen a few times and it's never explained, where you get a clear clear understanding of what that is. Not why he's walking that way, but you get why it is a thing. So look, she gets the better teacher after berating the other teacher into slapping her and getting him fired, which is all part of her master plan that she didn't actually come up with. She gets the solo, and now she's getting sex? I mean, after all these things with her sister, I mean, damn, you are just waiting for things. I wonder if we're ever going to get that same visual we got in the beginning that we're going to get to end with our lead jumping off into oblivion. But after all this, how did I know that things were going to end with the student having a drink at her teacher's house and things were going to go weird? But then we find out he was the other guy her sister was talking about. Because initially it's like, that's not what I was asking for. But then she realizes he's the other guy. And there's so much verbal berating of both people and foreshadowing. I love how when she sees the pictures in her devil book, they fill in with color as things are happening in real life. And, when there was fire, you just knew that the teacher was going to be the one to burn down in his own house with the last of those symbols in the notebook until she draws in the last one of self-immolation. But I think I was a little confused watching this because the story says all these people died in the original Girl Who Died in the Beginning story. But in this movie, in this version of the story, her sister didn't die. Her parents didn't die, and seemingly the teacher didn't die because he called and said he wouldn't be at the concert. So I guess everyone's just getting injured, but no one's dying from this like in the previous version of the story. So you're like, okay, well, A, that's weird for starters, but maybe he didn't die because she burned the book, the devil's book, and maybe that stopped the flow of events. You root for her at one point, I think, through most of the movie, but with that final confrontation with her sister, you don't really know who to root for. You kind of feel bad rooting for this girl who you were just hoping could, have her moment in the sun. And now, all this stuff that she didn't do, that's falling for her. She's had a hand in it, but it makes it tough to think who you're actually rooting for. Almost you're rooting for no one. And that's when the insanity kicks in, like a less good Black Swan. But man, do I love the way this movie plays with lighting and musical I love the way this musical plays with lighting and musical cues. The artsy in me is all about it, with the lighting up of the exit sign, which obviously is symbolic for her exiting from this pain and the stress that she is feeling, that this book has somehow induced on her. I mean, no surprise, and really, it's, I guess, perceived to be vague. Did she dump? Did she jump? Did she fulfill the book's thoughts of sacrifice? I mean, I think it's implied she's dead, or is the joke really on me? Was it all a metaphor for her song she played? Like, I thought she was dead. She wasn't. And, in Black Swan, spoiler alert, how it ends, I really should put a spoiler alert for all these Welcome to the Blumhouse movies instead of Black Swan, but still. She finishes the piece and dies as she reaches this height where in this one, it looks like she jumps, then it's the piece, and then it jumps to her vision, and no, she's definitely dead. It's a weird thing, though, when she's definitely dead on this statue. She has consciousness for a bit, but no one notices her dead body and is just kind of going about their day. I mean, this is a weird movie. I like them weird, don't get me wrong, but the end was a little too ambiguous for me, and I really kind of want to know what actually happened. This isn't like Inception questioning with the top span. This is, okay, I'd like to know, but I'm not going to lose sleep over this. But I think my prediction holds true. 2 out of 4 are good. The other 2 are One is clearly worse. But let's really lock it in. Let's do another Nick Nack Goes to the Movies list. So this is going to be a short look. So this is going to be a short one, but might as well rank them in order. You got to have a list every so often, right? Some of these may be obvious. I think the last 2 I was pacing back and forth about which one was the best. But here they are, just for fun anyway. Number 4 has to be The Lie. Nothing supernatural happens. I don't love most of the acting. It's a really weird plot that's been done way better many a times. And it's all a joke in the end and nothing matters. And guess what? This film doesn't matter. Number 3, Evil Eye. Was it an amazing movie? No. Was it a fun movie? I think so. Think of this as a Halloween Town 3, the high school one. It's festive in the sense of spooky-ish. It's not really October festive. None of these are really October festive, but it's a scary-ish movie that's a little unnerving. Not so scared that anyone's going to freak out. It's a little creepy, and it's a fun enough time. Not great, but fine. Number 2, I loved is a strong word. I love Scream. I love Matrix. I love Coco. I respected Nocturne. I really did, and I talked a lot of nice things about it. I think I was probably very much of a nicer reviewer on Nocturne and Black Box than most critics were, I would say. But I enjoyed Nocturne for what it was. Like I said, the lighting stuff is awesome. The classic music is nice. It's a little confusing at times. I don't think it's in the way of being so confusing that it, like, the audience is not about it because it's trying to be too smart that it's annoying. But I appreciated the way it tied darkness and music and these really cool lighting special effects into something that I feel like we all can relate to in some degree, which is fighting with our self-worth, right? And trying to take charge of our destiny. And obviously this, I'm not going to say it's like the Icarus thing where you fly too close to the sun and you get burned, but maybe that is what it is. Number 1, I'm going Black Box. I think Nocturne was good. I think Black Box was just a bit better. Maybe it's because we get a fully realized nice family story. I really liked the family story in this one. And I think the scares of going into this thing to see what's going on and maybe the fact of someone else being inside you and just a creepy, creaky creature. There was just so much good here between a really heartwarming story and Nocturne might be a little scarier, but Black Box, because it's so less abstract, it feels a little more, and look, none of these are realistic except for the lie maybe, but I don't know with that plot, but it feels a little more realized. And if any of these were going to happen, it would be Black Box. And I think, you know, some of the inherent fear of, you know, not being there to care for your child, and there's some inherent fears that we are exposed to, and it's a nice end. Not that I always need my horror movies to have a nice end, but in this case, I was rooting for the happy family to come together in the end, and they did. Well, folks, I wanted to do this one to make sure to be ready for next spooky season. I think this would actually have to be in September I'm doing it, but maybe I'll do early October. Depends how I feel about doing a free-form part 2, but definitely there'll be a Ready for the Blumhouse 2021 edition part 2. And now I really have at least a baseline for what to expect of these, what to make, what to go into them thinking when I make that plunge. Just throwing this out there, working on a few social media hang-ups, so I think the best plan of action for where you guys can keep up with stuff, Instagram, just where you've been going, Knickknack Movies. For Twitter, I would say for now, go to my personal account, knickknack_IC. I'm trying to migrate the content there until whatever's going on with the show Twitter account will get sorted out. And as usual, make sure to leave a review, rank us 5 stars, and make sure to tell every person you see at the grocery store or on the other side of the street, 6 feet apart, social distancing, wearing a mask, yell them through your two-fold mask, your Andy Reid face shield, that they have to be exposed to the magic of Knickknack Goes to the Movies. Your second or third walk, you're looking for something to do in the neighborhood. You see someone, just shout out, Knickknack Goes to the Movies, you won't regret it. Tell them where it's available. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, so many other places. But guys, the Twitter question I'm going to post to y'all, let me know what you thought about this first slate of Welcome to the Blumhouse movies. I want to know, did my order do what you guys think? Are people blown away by The Lie being as scorned by me as I think anyone should? I would be blown away if someone had a different opinion, but I'd love to hear it if someone had a different opinion. But as always, until next time, cinephiles, are you not entertained? I think this is going to be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.